Welcome to another episode of Latinos Who Thrive. I am your host, Victor Escalante. Today we want to welcome two new countries that are listening to us throughout the world. That is Russia and Canada. We have Latinos scattered all over the world, and we now add those two countries for a total of 10 countries worldwide. So welcome. Today I want to talk to you about the topic that we discussed with a previous guest. That is the Imposter Syndrome. I am now convinced after reading the book, Positive Intelligence, and taking a training with Sharad Chamin, the author of the book, that the imposter syndrome is pretty much a universal phenomena that affects the majority of people. Those that are able to overcome it are because they have specialized training or they have a family that is very encouraging, that is very supportive in the formative years to where people develop a healthy self-esteem. We have a survival mechanism that is tied to our primitive mind. That's the reptilian and the limbic system that reacts to any kind of danger, whether it's real or perceived. We're going to be warned not to do anything. That is a response for the fight or flight or freeze response. Here's how it affects us. We have an inner critic within us all that is currently criticizing us, telling us not to do certain things, telling us that we're not good enough. And usually this voice is tied to our mother. This is not hating on mothers by any means. This is just the parent that we are closest to when we are being raised as kids. So this voice inside of us constantly telling us that we're not good enough, that we cannot do something, that we should not stand out. But here's what I want you to try to do to that voice. Ask it what it wants for you. And you might be pleasantly surprised that it tells you that it's trying to get you to do better than most everybody. So that's the positive intention behind this inner critic that lives within us, is to get us to be better. Yet the memo never got to that voice that that's not the right way to communicate with us, to inspire us. So if you ask that inner voice if it would be willing to talk to you in an encouraging way and to change its message, you might be pleasantly surprised. Now, if you don't have that kind of relationship with an inner critic, it may require some professional work. And that's what I've done with hundreds of people over the years, is to help them to resolve that inner conflict. The judge, once you make peace with it, the judge is still going to judge people in your environment, people that you work with, colleagues, clients. Also, it's going to judge circumstances. It's going to be critical of situations that maybe are not ideal for you. And sometimes that is very demotivating. So what you got to do is you got to be on guard that the critic, the judge inside of you, is constantly putting you down and limiting you. According to the author of Positive Intelligence, Sharad Chamin, he says that only 20% of teams and individuals achieve their true potential because of the inner judge that is stopping them, as well as accomplices that the inner judge has, which are inner saboteurs. I'm going to give you the list of saboteurs in no particular order. We have a saboteur that is in charge of making us restless, making us anxious, never satisfied with what we have, constantly seeking that bright, shiny object, addicted to things outside of ourselves that keep us from being present with our loved ones, that keep us from being focused on the real critical things that matter. There's also the hyper-rational, which is a part of us that is hyper-rational about everything, that is very robotic, that is very computer-like. And that part of us is very putting off to others because we tend to have an explanation for everything and everything. And even sometimes if we don't know something, we make stuff up. That is your inner saboteur that is constantly fighting just the flow of things, just the human interaction to go with the flow. In addition to that, we have a controller. A controller is always trying to be in control because there's a deep insecurity that somehow if you're not in control, things are going to go south and you're going to find yourself out of control. Moreover, we have a hyperachiever that sometimes this hyperachiever never lets us rest. It's never satisfied with whatever accomplishments that we have. And so we have this inner battle within us that we can't even enjoy a milestone in our career, in our business. So we got to be mindful that this hyperachiever takes a break and allows us to just take a break and enjoy the success that we're having. There's also a stickler that is always fighting to make things the very best that they can be. But you know what? Sometimes things don't need to be perfect. Things can be just the way they are without having to work towards some unrealistic perfection. There's also the pleaser that is always getting us to act in not necessarily in our best interest, but always trying to please others and always saying yes when sometimes we really want to say no. There's also the hypervigilant that is always paranoid about what things could go wrong. Now, granted, it's good to be cautious. It's good to be conservative. It's good to be vigilant. But when you're hypervigilant, you're not at ease and you are hyper stressed out because of things that could go wrong. I once worked with a gentleman that he was a division commander in the Navy, and every morning he would wake up dreading that something awful was going to happen. When I helped him to realize that this was tied to his childhood, he was able to let go and not be so paranoid about things going wrong. There's also the victim within us that sometimes we feel like the world has it out for us, or people don't understand us, or people take advantage of us. We need to be very cautious that this victimhood doesn't get the best of us and we don't reach our full potential. Finally, there's the avoider. The avoider is that part of us that refuses to confront people or situations that sometimes that is the only language that people understand, is to take a stand and to say enough is enough. We need to find a different way of doing things, and we need to work together towards mutual cooperation in order to be able to have a win-win situation. So these saboteurs that I have just outlined for you today, I'm going to put a link in the show notes for you to take a test. And I want you to get back to me and share with me the results. The results of this test, you're going to be able to have an explanation thoroughly by every saboteur that comes up for you to understand and to have insight of what's really going on inside of you that is keeping you from living to your full potential. So I look forward to hearing back from you. And I look forward to bringing you experts to be able to deal with the imposter syndrome. Until next time, thank you for your listenership and go out there and thrive.